Oh, no.
Scary.
Yeah, it is. It is. Used to be.
I
For sure. So the one nice center is.
One of my ties.
Yeah, it used to be. I think that actually.
I talked to him.
Oh, that's right.
I'm so sorry.
That's right.
I got a call. He's like, I told you he had good. He was diagnosed.
Somebody else.
No, I was that. To 23rd and 24th.
Okay, thank you. I'll talk to you anyway.
No, right. Oh, my neck.
I think you get this.
I don't think I'm gonna get cold here.
Sorry, this is your phone.
Without even thinking too much.
Never got that way. Hard cat.
Last 3 years. So, 55. So here you go.
Well, I ain't gonna make you feel like.
It's cracked.
It's here.
They're really good.
I think I know how to.
We're waiting on the just bob through the meeting. She'll expect it, Mike.
You might need to meet. You might need to meet.
Yes, Scott. Scott. He got he was a consultant. And he's been doing that about 2 years because we left us. And the thing about it is the consultant. We travel once a year.
Fire alarm.
All the rest is.
Taylor
Just do it.
Pinnick?
Yep.
Fire.
All right, I got 5:30. All right, we'll call the meeting to order. It's the 2/22/22 Tuesday meeting of Manhattan Area Technical College Board of Directors. Session. Take a look at the consent agenda.
Not Brad, respecting Mike. Sorry. We do have a quorum, we got 5.
Yeah. I think good. Everybody get a chance to review the minutes from last meeting? And have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I make motion to
Second.
Been properly moved in second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any nays? All right, motion passes. And we'll move on to the general agenda.
We've got a couple new personnel, one not a new person, but in a new role, and then we have new personnel, so.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Sure. So I'll let her introduce herself, but Beth Dugan was previously our welcome desk attendant.
And we put out for an academic advisor for adult education, something that's relatively new for the state. But it acts as a career coach, an academic coach, and Beth has a great repertoire with our students and our ESL students. So we're very excited to welcome her aboard. But Beth, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
Hi, I went to school here 30 some years ago.
Wow, yeah, how long ago?
But I'm very excited for this new role that I'm going to be taking on with Chris and look forward to working with the GED and ESL students. So
Well, welcome. We really appreciate you.
thank you. I appreciate all of you too. So.
Okay, just some Boxburger guy.
We have another Boxburger.
Yeah.
I hope you're not really-
Well, I don't think Mike claims Chris,
No.
but he claims Ollie.
Yeah, that's true.
So Mike Boxberger is on as interim director of finance, helping us with, he's been working with Carmelo, helping all of us, diving in. Extensive background with what I would call systems analysis, good tech skills. So Mike, let's have you say whatever you'd like to say about you and yourself in this wonderful world you've jumped into with us.
It's very, very exciting. I'm challenged, but I'm ready. I'm really getting, how can I say, acclimated to a whole new environment, but very similar to what I've done for the past 20, 30 years. So that's about it.
Well, Mike, is it physical, emotional? You said, or mentally? You said you're challenged, so I was trying to figure it out.
Yeah, it could, no, I don't think it's any of that. There are challenges everywhere.
I think he's pretty committed because I saw him Saturday morning at the pancake breakfast for skills. So I thought he just worked all night.
He was delivering pancakes to guys over here at CarQuest.
Very nice. Well, we really appreciate you and welcome you as well. I would say I'd offer you some help, but I don't know anything about that, so good luck.
So he's working with Carmela.
Well, you're in good hands with Carmela.
And we also have Mr. Mattson is on Zoom with us, so we've got 6 board members now.
Oh, hey, Mike.
Hey, guys, I apologize for missing my first meeting last month. You didn't want to be near me. I had a breakthrough case of COVID, and so I thought it would be wise just to stay home and recover. Feeling great now. I'm looking forward to serving on this board and looking forward to being there in person. It would have happened today, except that, like Mike, I'm also starting a brand new day job. This is my second day on the job as CEO and executive director of a nonprofit journalism startup that has a presence in Kansas City and Wichita. And so that is keeping my time occupied, or otherwise I'd have been there in person. But I look forward to serving on this board and getting to know you all individually and collectively.
Mike, it's great to see you again. I know we chatted, gosh, I guess it was last year sometime.
Yeah, you bet. I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to working with you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Looking forward to it. I also had a COVID vacation about 3 or 4 weeks ago, so I know exactly what you're going through.
Fair
I'm
enough.
glad you're better and able to join the meeting today.
You bet.
All right,
Program
update.
Introduce Justin.
Nathan can.
What's up?
Introduce Justin. You get to deal with Justin.
I got to deal with Justin. All right. So this is our ABD faculty, and he's going to give you a little update on how his program is going. He's on a little different cycle than some of the other programs where his new batch of students just came in here in the spring. So tell us a little about yourself and how
What does EPD stand for?
Electric power distribution. Well, we're doing good this year. Got pretty much a full class. We jumped right into climbing skills. These guys are doing wonderful. They're doing they already did their cross arm change out. 8-foot single, 8-foot double cross arm change out, 10-foot double cross arm change out. And if anybody knows, like that's like 50, 60, that's 60 pounds of cross arm. And so you put two together, you know, that's pretty heavy, but We've had Evergy show up. I brought them in to help with climbing skills because they got to climb a certain way at that boot camp. And I want them climbing the right way. So I bring Evergy in to help out, making sure that they're climbing the way they should be, on the Evergy way. And they helped out with a little bit with the 8-foot cross arms that day. Guys are doing things right. And we also had Evergy trainers in their day going over, checking out the guys, making sure that they're doing things right. Kind of keeping an eye on the guys to see who they want for interns and possibly, eyeing guys out for the boot camp. The guys know their knots. We've already had knot quiz. I guess you got to be, somewhat of a Boy Scout when you're a lineman too, because you got to know a lot of knots. And so they did really well. I think everybody passed knots with an A. Next, we'll get into pole framing and construction specs. That'll probably, I'm kind of going to fudge some stuff around and throw them guys out there probably tomorrow. We'll be out at the site working on poles and getting things framed up. So they'll learn the construction specs and then after that we get into truck operation, and I'll start messing with the trucks and become a full-time mechanic after that, because all my trucks you know how old those trucks are. So I'll probably get a little dirty next week or when we get into them. So, but we're just, kind of staying away from the super cold weather. Today we kind of stayed inside. I felt it'd be a little bit dangerous to get the guys out on the pole at 12 degrees. If we do that, we need to do some stretching and some warm up. So I didn't want to hurt anybody today. So we had plenty to do inside. But as far as that, we're just going to continue chugging along and hope for spring to come soon enough. And that way we can get everything done. Hopefully it stays. I know you guys are wanting it to probably, get wet because we're lacking in the moisture, but it's nice for me when it stays dry. We can get a lot done. So
tell the board about what you do on campus and what you do out at the Keats site.
On campus, we have a mini lab, set up poles every fall for the new spring class. There's 22 poles sitting there. That's where they learn, climbing. That's where we do the climbing, the over unders, and the cross arm change out, and the pole top rescue. And once we get done with all that and start moving towards the site with pole framing, we go out to 33-acre site or 30-acre site, and them guys just have, big area to frame poles on the ground. I got, what do I have? Like 9 or 10 poles laid out, and the guys will pair up and get 2 people per pole, and they got like 50, I think it's like 55 structures that they got to frame for me on the ground. And they get points for that. And also after that, we get into trucks. They learn how to drive the trucks out there, not necessarily drive, but operate buckets and diggers. And after that, I start teaching them how to stake line. They get into these groups and they start staking their own line. And then after that, I check over the line, make sure it looks all right. And then from there, they start building that line that they staked out. And so by the time we're done with everything, which is building line, middle of September, we have a hotline school. They have, roughly 50 to 70 structures built out there. We've got 3-phase line, single phase line, V-phase line. We've got double circuits out there. We've got transformers hanging off of poles. It's just kind of like a real life situation out there. I mean, we're just missing the housing. So
it's nice, gentle land out there, right? It's nice, easy land.
Yeah. I can't complain. I'm used to, so back in 2003, when I came through school, we had that other land that was across from that Blueville nursery, and that was hilly. I'm surprised, but I'm surprised the instructor could ever find us. There's so many hills, and we'd hide out sometimes. But this land is nice, and this land is nice and flat. You're able to, you're able to keep an eye on guys from a distance, which makes it nice.
So Justin, not everybody's super comfortable with heights. So you've got a kind of a fun activity that you have them do as they're getting used to being up on the poles. What is that activity again?
I got several different activities that I give the guys. One of them is when they're up on the pole, they play catch with a football, usually stick 2 guys up on a pole. I haven't done that this year. We just been sticking 1 guy up on the pole and throwing the football and basketball around to, it makes them think not about the height. It makes them think about catching the ball. So it takes their mind off of the heights. And that's really what happens when you get up there. You don't think about the heights. You think about the task at hand. And so, throwing the ball around up top and playing a little keep away, that's one way that we do it. Now there's, cross arm change outs when they're up there. They're not even thinking about the heights. They're thinking about getting the cross arm done because it's a pain in the butt. But I also got a 55-foot pole sitting out there that they all got to climb and to the top. And that lets me to see, who's still kind of scared of climbing. That way I can work with them a little bit better.
I know for me, playing ball at that height, put more trust in your equipment.
Yeah, it does. It really does. We teach them to turn around their belts, walk all the way down off the pole and just hang from their belt that's up there. We do a lot of different things to get their mind off of the heights. I think I still got like 1 or 2 guys that are still, they're not sure, but I think the further we get into this, I think they'll be fine.
Justin, speaking on behalf of a couple of military guys sitting in here, sounds like you are starting with fundamentals, which are important. And we used to have a couple of sayings in the Army, repetition, repetition, repetition. And practice doesn't make perfect, it makes permanent. So as much as you can get those guys in there and have them comfortable with their equipment, going up and down the poles, I think we'll be training, really good linesmen for the future. So keep it up.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, thanks, Justin. We really appreciate it, man.
Thank you, guys.
Be safe.
All right. I think we are heading to the audit presentation. Are they all? Is that Taylor?
Taylor up there on the screen.
All right, Taylor, you're up, man.
All right. Thanks for having me. I believe both the communication letter and the financial statements were provided in the board packet. I want to start with the communication letter. Basically what that is that's our communication as the auditors to those charged with governance, which would be the board. It kind of lays out first our responsibility as the auditors. We are responsible for performing the audit in accordance with auditing standards generally accepted in the US, as well as applicable standards contained in governmental auditing standards. We're required to remain independent, both appearance and fact, from the college. And then further, we also perform the audit in accordance with requirements of the Uniform Guidance, which is the governmental compliance that operates the federal award programs for the college. The plan, scoping, and timing of the audit. We began our field work in October and issued our final reports in February. Typically, we like to do that a little bit sooner. This year with doing a lot of remote, Carmelo being part-time and, kind of transitioning to someone new, kind of put a little bit of strain on the process, but certainly nothing that it just kind of strung out longer than we would like. And certainly in the future, our hope is to turn this thing around a little bit faster. As part of our planned scope of the audit, we're tasked with performing a risk assessment one of the things that we've kind of decided to do to all of our clients is, we evaluate a lot of areas for risk, and we've decided for every one of our clients, we're going to pick the one area that we want to communicate to, basically saying, this is one area that we really feel like has the opportunity for risk, whether it's, fraud or error. So please don't take this as, we found something that needs to be reiterated. Every one of our clients we kind of put this as like a value service saying, hey, these are the areas that you really need to be cognizant of. And the one we chose for the college was manual journal entries. If you go through your accounting software, there's a significant number of accounting journal entries. And we've kind of had this conversation in the past with Carmela. And the one thing I will say is that every year that we've done this, I've seen an improvement from where we started at the beginning to where we are, as far as like really utilizing all of the modules and all of the opportunities that the accounting software provides. Basically, we note that anytime you're creating a manual journal entry, that just increases the risk of error, just because you're doing something outside the scope of the way the audit system was designed. A lot of these are reviewed by management, which is a key control in the audit process, which is great. So we just like to reiterate that you should continue to monitor those situations, and then adding additional controls as far as who can actually post journal entries, who can review them, would be a way to enhance that design of key internal control. There were no difficulties encountered in performing the audit. We did not identify any actual or suspected fraud as a result of our audit. There were no significant accounting policy changes during 2021 to note. All of the financial disclosures are neutral, clear, and consistent. Corrected and uncorrected misstatements. An uncorrected misstatement would be, something that we would deem trivial and not necessarily required to be corrected, and we would leave that up to management. A corrected misstatement would be one that either was trivial or material and management corrected. There were no materially corrected journal entries, and there were no uncorrected misstatements in the year. We did identify a few a few trivial entries that we gave management to post in their system, but nothing that we felt rose to the level of needed to be communicated with governance. There's no disagreements with management in the audit process. Management provided us with the representation letter accepting their responsibility for the audit. As far as we're aware, there were no consultations with any outside independent accountants, specifically regarding the audit process. Basically, shopping around for a second opinion on anything that was presented to them. If we go on to the next page, there's a couple recent accounting guidance that has been issued that will potentially affect the college in the coming year. The two statements listed there, we've been, any of our GASB clients, we've been putting these on here. Neither one of them are going to materially affect the college as it sits currently. But we like to make them aware, like management, to at least have seen these and do a little bit of their own due diligence. But we're certainly here to answer any questions on anything that they could potentially do different, or anything that they may be seeing in the coming years that these standards could affect. And then the last one that we wanted to really make the board aware of is the relationship with the foundation. as this states here, GASB Statement 39 requires that all legally separate tax exempt organizations be reported as a component unit if they meet certain criteria. Those criteria are listed. The resources of the affiliated organization benefit the college. The college is entitled to or can otherwise access the resources, and the resources are considered significant to the college. We evaluated all three of those in the current year. The next paragraph down talks about, we went out and we looked at the most recent publicly available 990. The foundation reported a little over $600,000 of assets, which equate to about 8% of the total college assets on the 2021 financial statements. It's our opinion that we believe the foundation meets all of the criteria listed in that statement and believe that it should be presented as a component unit with the college's financial statements. Further to kind of give us a little bit more foundation and a little more information, we went out and viewed several other colleges and technical colleges or whatnot throughout Kansas, and each one of those appear that their foundation is being reported as a component unit. So that's one thing we really wanted to bring to the attention of the board for your consideration for the upcoming audit year. Are there any questions on that letter? I know I kind of went pretty quick, but it's, there's a lot of information and whatnot in there. So I want to, give you the floor to kind of ask any questions or ask for any clarifications on anything.
Taylor, I have two questions. The first one, you or Carmela could answer this, but what would be a reason for us to do a manual journal entry?
So basically, a lot of accounting systems are very robust, and some, and I'm not speaking specifically about this process, but what I find a lot is management just deems it easier to not utilize that system, whether they haven't been properly trained or whether that's a system that is an extra add-on to the current system. So they've decided that the cost isn't worth it. That's generally what I see. And like I said, when I started on this audit, I don't know, 5 years ago, a lot more of that was being done. But they've really worked on taking steps in the right direction. So that's kind of the general idea. I can let Carmela speak to specifics if she wants to, but that's kind of how it normally, the reason that's usually given.
That is correct. What Taylor described is correct. In most systems, there are the systems are put into place to automate so you don't have to do as many journal entries. As Jim knows, and I think many of you who have been on the board, but for those of you that are new, when Jim first came to the college, we were not using the Genzabar system to its potential. We were using bits and pieces. So what Taylor is referring to at the beginning was they did do a lot of journal entries because they weren't using the system. And over the years, we started putting in processes, kind of automating. Still, I would say that in my opinion, Genzabar's accounting software is almost an afterthought, because the student information system is what's most important, tracking the grades and the student. And so the accounting software, while we have the full module, it wasn't set up properly. So in order to set it up properly now, it's going to take a lot of effort. And we do know that, and that is something that we've little by little pieced together and become more automated over the years. And I know we'll continue to do that. But as Taylor mentioned, yes, it was all journal entries. For instance, if we received money from the federal government, journal entry. When we did anything, it was a journal entry. Now we actually go through the system and receipt those in properly the way it's supposed to be, so that it, is less likely for human error. So that, do have some room for improvement there, but as Taylor mentioned, there has been a lot of improvement.
And if you remember, in previous audits, they've made recommendations within our resources. We've acted to take on those recommendations that they've made, you've made. So, we've added more modules from Gensbar. We've done more of the training, but as she mentioned, when I got here, they had purchased this, which is a student information system with these add-ons, but the college had not budgeted any training money. So we've literally been in a catch-up from day one. So, yep, room for improvement, but it's a lot better than it used to be.
Absolutely.
And I would tell you, the reason why I asked that question, we have a few new board members involved in the process now, but I wanted you to paint the picture for everybody so they understand the progress we've made. So we are getting better incrementally, but it's my desire that we continue to do that. Anytime we're doing manual entries, of course, there's the risk, as you guys laid out, that you fat finger something, that you make some mistake, and we want to try to minimize that. And that's why we do an audit, so you guys would help us catch it, but we don't want to make those kinds of mistakes.
Right.
And then, go ahead.
No, I was just going to reiterate or kind of expand on that a little bit is, and the one thing I see a lot with organizations as a whole is the amount of time that it takes to really develop proper systems sometimes is detrimental to the system itself. But at the end, and when you get everything set up and you're using everything like it's designed, it frees up substantial amount of time at the end. It's just the time investment is so great at the beginning, which is why, in my opinion, I think the college has taken, the steps, to do it over time. And, as long as I see progress moving forward, I'm happy with that. And I, I applaud the efforts, going forward.
I appreciate that. And the other thing I was going to address is the foundation points that you made there. I know there have been discussions over the past few years, and hopefully we're getting to where we need to be with the foundation. We've talked about audits and, filing 990s and all this other stuff and trying to make sure that we're tracking it the right way. We want to be as transparent as possible with what we're doing with the foundation, and we're playing catch up in that arena as well.
Right.
So your recommendation about displaying that as a part, can you just reiterate that again, how we show that?
Yeah, so basically what would happen is the foundation's assets and statement of activities and everything would be consolidated with the report, but also shown as a component unit. And you would still be able to differentiate the two. They're still separate legal entities. But part of that process would be that we would have to perform limited audit procedures on the foundation as well to have those presented as a component unit. So you're kind of getting 2 for 1 when you do that, as far as, you're getting the audit that sounds like you've discussed in the past, because that has to be done to present it. But then you're also getting the information into the hands of the users of the financial statements as required by GASB standards. So.
Thank you.
And
go ahead, Carmela.
I'm so sorry. And the CFI is also, they use the foundation as part of the component to calculate the CFI as well. So that's just helpful there as well.
Yeah, again, I mean, transparency is important. We don't want to be second guessed on it.
Right.
I know we've got some bankers in here who could speak better to the need for that than I, but I just think as we move forward, is that something that we need to take action on to make that a part of?
I think the proper way would be for the board to make that recommendation to the foundation trustees.
Yeah, okay.
But then with that, you have to clarify who's going to pay for that part of the audit. You want the foundation to pay for that part of the college.
Okay.
But we can get that done in the next month or two.
Okay, sounds good.
Yep.
Okay, thanks, Taylor.
Yep.
Anybody else got questions or? Okay,
All right, I'll jump over to the financial statements. It's a pretty big document. I usually hit on the reports that are in there. I typically don't dive, super deep into the financials for several reasons. One, you've seen the financials over the course of the last 6-8 months. As I mentioned, also there were not significant audit adjustments. So basically, what you're seeing is the information that you've seen, since the year end. But you also had, I believe this ahead of time. So if you had any questions on any of the financials that I don't go over, certainly let me know. But I like to really spend my time on the auditor's reports. So if we get past the title page and the table of content, the first one is our independent auditor's report on the financial statements of the college. The first paragraph talks about our responsibility. And once again, our responsibility is to issue an opinion on the whether the financial statements are free of material misstatement, whether due to fraud or error. I always like to reiterate the word material. We don't come in and audit every single transaction. As I mentioned earlier, we use a risk-based approach. We target areas that are higher risk. We're making opinion on the financial statements as a whole. Our responsibility, we conduct all of our responsible audit procedures in accordance with several auditing standards, one being those generally accepted in the US, also the Kansas Municipal Audit and Accounting Guide, and because you're subject to uniform guidance, we also use government auditing standards as well. The next couple of paragraphs are pretty standard language. The opinion paragraph at the bottom, that's really kind of what this whole process is for. In our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the college. Basically, what that means is it's a clean opinion. There was nothing discovered in the audit process that would preclude us from issuing a clean opinion. That's the highest opinion that you can get. On to page 2 of that report, there's several paragraphs talking about some additional work that we've done. First are the required supplemental information, which includes the management discussion and analysis. We assist in preparing that, but a lot of that is, a lot of that information is prepared by management. We do perform limited procedures, and in our opinion, there's nothing in there that is basically out of scope. The supplemental information is the budgetary comparison schedule. Once again, we receive that budget information from management, and we apply limited procedures on that. The schedule of expenditures of federal awards, which that has a separately issued a report at the end we'll go over. But we applied standards, auditing standards, as required by the uniform guidance. And we believe that all of the information in the CFA is fairly stated in all material respects. And then we also issue an opinion on governmental auditing standards and whether or not we believe there's any non-compliance with any of those. And those are separate reports at the end that we'll go over. And then the last paragraph just says that because you're preparing or you're presenting comparative year financial information, we actually only audited 2021, and the prior year was audited by another firm, and they as well issued an unmodified opinion on those financial statements on a report dated December 4th, 2020. Any questions on that one?
Nope, go ahead.
Okay, so we're going to scroll quite a ways, which I think it's page 21. And that's our independent auditors reports on compliance of each major program and the internal control over the compliance in accordance with uniform guidance. The management responsibility and auditors responsibility are very similar, same responsibilities. In our opinion, the college complied in all material respects with the types of compliance requirements referred to above that could have a direct and material effect on each of the major programs for the year ended June 30, 2021. Basically what that means is, once again, a clean opinion. There was nothing that we found that would be material to bring to the board's attention. The next paragraph on the last page talks about a deficiency in internal control. It goes on to define what that would be. You see the bolded at the second. We did not identify any deficiencies in internal control that we would consider to be a material weakness. However, material weaknesses may exist that have not been identified. Basically, we went in and we performed all of our auditing standards, and we did not identify anything that needed to be discussed further with the board.
Isn't that called covering your back end?
Yeah, pretty much. That's the lawyers that help write these things. So. And then the next one is our independent auditors report on internal control over financial reporting. Basically, very similar. It's a separate. The first one was talking about individual programs. This one's over, total internal control reporting. And so the one thing I always like to point out on this one, it says that while we do perform certain audit procedures, we are not testing internal controls. Therefore, we do not express an opinion on the effectiveness of the college's internal controls. We gain an understanding of them, and if a deficiency in internal control is identified, we're required to communicate that with the board, but we certainly don't test all of the operational effectiveness of the internal controls. But once again, our audit did not identify any deficiencies in internal control over financial reporting that we consider to be material weaknesses. And then the last couple pages are the schedule of financial awards. The one thing I did want to talk about on this is the review of the financial statements during the year. We believe that there is a high likelihood that there's going to need to be a second program tested under the uniform guidance, basically a second single audit of another program in the current fiscal year. So that's one thing from a budget purpose I wanted to make the board aware of. At the time of the audit report, we couldn't tell 100% because it's all based on expenditures in the current year, and obviously you're not through the current year. But just looking at the money that was received and being spent, and discussions with Carmela, we're pretty fairly certain that that's going to be a requirement in the current year. And then the last one is schedule of findings and question costs for the college. We issued both unmodified opinions. There were no internal control deficiencies reported. There were no audit findings and no reportable financial statement findings, and no findings on question costs of federal award programs. Any questions on anything I went over related to the single audit process and some of the additional work with the second program that I mentioned?
I have a question for Carmella, just on the federal dollars we received, all of those grants, were they all grants, or were we able to repay anything?
Correct. They were all grants.
Okay. And we expended everything we needed to expend, or were we able to hold on to some of that?
Most of it was reimbursement. So we would spend and then we would draw those funds down. The only time we drew money down that weren't expended, tangible expended, is when we were able to draw down based upon lost revenue calculations. And we went by the criteria of the grant. We were able to look at our credit hours, do a 3-year history. And if we had less credit hours, we could kind of take that difference. And that's the only time we drew down without having actual expenditures.
Thank you. And then Taylor, you mentioned the second audit.
Yes.
Is that something we plan for now, or?
I would suggest planning for it now, just from a budgetary standpoint, because there's going to be a little bit of additional cost, just because it's not a full-blown second audit, but we're auditing a second financial award program. And I don't have the exact, one, we would really need to dig into the requirements of the program, because that is a determination on the scope of work and what needs to be done. But, and also, full disclosure, my partner is the single audit expert. And so he and I were going to visit with either Carmella or Jim, after this meeting, and kind of say, hey, this is what we're thinking as far as scope, cost, time. Just so now would be a good time to start thinking about it, one, from budgetary purposes, but also from compliance, things that we're going to be asking for, things that we're going to need to be reviewed. It's always good to know that, kind of going in, because in prior years, the same program has been tested every year. It's always the federal direct student loans program that goes through. And so changing up not changing, because that would need to be tested in addition to the COVID relief funds. But so yes, I definitely think that management needs to be thinking about that. And then we can also provide basically what our proposal would be, one, for that program, and then also include what we would be thinking should the college choose us to audit the foundation, which, once again, full disclosure, wouldn't be a requirement for us to be the ones to audit it. We would sure, like that. And also, I mean, it would save a little bit of money, just because some of the controls would be able to cross over, but it certainly wouldn't be a requirement. As long as it's audited, we would be able to dump that and consolidate that with your financial statements.
I know I don't speak on behalf of the entire board, but I mean, that's an operational issue. I trust Jim and Carmella and maybe Mike, but we don't know yet about him. But
Yeah.
we'll let them handle that about the budget and figure that out. And then I think you guys should make us a really good offer if you want to be able to audit the foundation.
All right.
Anything else?
From my standpoint, so go ahead. No, I'm just gonna say, from my standpoint, I that's kind of concludes my spiel. One thing I always tell all of the board members when I give presentations is this is not a speak now or forever hold your peace type thing. If you have questions about something, whether it's a recommendation that I made or a note disclosure that I didn't go over, anything like that, Jim and Carmella have my contact information or my partner's contact information. And one of the things we always express to all of our clients is, the audit process, doesn't end when I give you, this report. We want to be there as allies, I guess is the word I'd use, throughout the course of the year. I want my clients to be able to feel comfortable to call and ask questions, make sure especially if it's something new or something like that, because it always makes the audit process easier if we're involved in something that may or may not be, pretty easy or typical. So I always like to point that out. So.
I want to bring up real quick and correct me if I get any of this wrong, but full disclosure, since we do have some new board members, the part in the audit where he mentions the previous audit was done by a different company, it was still involved these folks. They worked with a different company at the time. That company decided not to do the GASB audits, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess that is a good point that, I'll reiterate, because I did talk about that I've worked with the foundation or with the college for a number of years, but I wasn't the one actually ultimately in charge of the audit as far as signing the audit report. My partner and I previously worked for another firm, and over a year ago started our own. And once, we spoke to Carmela and Jim and kind of said, hey, we would love to continue the relationship if they don't. And so, that's kind of how we got from point A to point B. So.
And in my 40 some years in this business, it's been good to have auditors familiar with us. They work with us to help us fix things. They make the recommendations. They know about us. So it's been a good relationship, but I just wanted to make sure people realized we kept the same two dudes that keep us going.
Yeah, I guess you guys are all right.
Yeah, I didn't get too many complaints. I'm sure Carmela was tired of some of our emails at 10 or 11 o'clock at night, but she did a great job, and the rest of the staff that helps with the audit process. We don't have any complaints on that end. So it's refreshing to work with a group that takes it seriously and really wants to put their best step forward, and like I mentioned earlier, keep progressing. That's the biggest thing is always moving forward and getting better each year.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, is that an action item? Are you doing things?
It's an action item to accept the audit.
Okay, I'll accept a motion to accept the audit report as presented.
I make that motion to accept as presented.
Okay, been properly moved. Do I have a second?
A second.
Been properly moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 All right. Any nays? Okay, motion passes. We're accepting the audit report as presented. Thank you very much, Taylor.
Absolutely. Everyone have a wonderful evening.
All right, you as well. Okay, I think the next thing on the agenda is Sarah, academic proposals.
I do. I have 2 academic proposals, but I need separate action on each of them. So the first request is to establish a certificate C in automotive technology and luckily we had Jeff. I don't know where Jeff went, but we had Jeff. But the demand for auto technicians has gone up dramatically in the industry. And so what we're seeing is that students are wanting to get through the technical portion of the program as quickly as possible and out into the industry, which means that they may not necessarily, before they leave the institution, complete their gen ed requirements, but they can come back and do that with an AAS. Unfortunately, right now, the way that it's structured, if we have a student that leaves the program early like that, they're considered a non-completer, which hurts the program overall when it comes to funding. And so creating a certificate C will allow us to award a certificate showing that the students completed the technical portion of the program, and then they can come back and complete the gen ed portion later on and receive their associate's degree. So this proposal is a request of approval to offer certificate C in automotive technology.
All right, Jeff, I see you turned your light on. You were sitting in the dark. You have any other information to add?
Not too much. Sarah pretty much covered everything there. And I think that we also brought this before our advisory board and had some feedback on them before making this decision as well. What it also gives is us the chance to stay competitive. Most of the other programs in our area, in our competitive area, is doing the same thing, providing the certificate even on the 2-year program. So it puts us on an even playing field.
Jeff, does this meet the requirements that's set out by our customers that we have on the outside?
Yes, it does. We still strongly encourage the associate's degree, as do they, but the third-party accreditation we have with ASE this still meets all their requirements. So they're good to go forward in the industry, still complete the certifications and do the advanced trainings with dealerships and so forth. This won't affect that.
Do the kids come back and get the associates?
Oh, yeah, they can come back.
Do they, or we? like-
Sometimes it depends on the industry they're working in. If that particular industry wants them to have the associates, then they may pay for them to come back and get that. If they want to go on and get a bachelor's degree, like we're the only program in the state that both our instructors have bachelor's degrees. And so if they want to do that, then yes, they'll come back and get the associates, and then they can move into a bachelor program as well.
Jeff, Sarah just mentioned, if the employer wants to send them back, but if, let's say our graduates already have their associate's degree when they get the certificate as well, would they be paid more?
Potentially, yes. Some part of the industry does recognize that as being very important, and they do pay them more. It's not always the case yet, though. We still have a lot of ground to cover with that.
Yeah, and the reason I asked that question, we want to encourage folks to get that associate's degree, but it's kind of like dangling the carrot. Some people are going to want us to go start working right away and get money, but if they took the time to get the associates, they could make more money starting out. So I think it all depends on the individual student, kind of where they are in the job market process.
Yes, it does. And to finish the associates with the gen eds is usually a lot easier with online courses or evening courses. So it works around the day schedule a lot better as well. So if they get the certificate done, get to work, start producing the wages they need to continue, then it's more feasible as well.
Yeah. Any other questions?
All depends on how hungry they are.
Yeah,
Exactly.
okay. And that is an action item. So I'll need a motion to approve the automotive technology certificate C.
Make a motion to approve automotive technician C.
Okay, it's been properly moved. Do I have a second? A second. It's been properly moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? I don't think so. Hearing none. Motion passes. We are approved for the automotive technology certificate C.
Thank you.
Okay.
So the other one I'm bringing forward is a certificate B, and the reason why we have the levels A, B, and C is based on the number of credit hours, and that is set by K-Board. So that is their language that they utilize to know what level certificate you're receiving. The certificate B is a 33 credit hour certificate in business administration assistant. We do have the associate's degree pathway for administrative assistant, but obviously we have individuals depending on their lifestyle and how quickly they need to get in the workforce, that they need to come in and be here just a year and not 2 years, and then be able to go out in the workforce and get a job. And so that's what this has specifically been created for.
Can they follow the same path with the evening classes,
Yep, they
et
can.
cetera?
We see more of the business students come in, get that initial certificate, and whether it be a county or administrative assistant or go those paths, usually they'll go to work and then they'll continue to work on it through, because all those courses are blended or online. So it's very flexible. There's the hand-on component is not as substantial as what it is in one of our T&I programs. So it's easier for them to continue within it. But they want to be able to walk out with something that they can present to the industry partner saying that is recognizable. Well, I know if you got this certificate from MATC, I know what type of training you've received.
Sarah, do you know off the top of your head how long that program is?
What, the certificate B?
Yes.
It's 1 year.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. We have anybody else just want to comment on that
No,
on the call?
no.
Has there, from the advisory group for, what's their support?
Yes, they approved it. I don't bring anything to board without the advisory group approving it prior. So it's gone through curriculum committee, advisory group, advisory curriculum, and then it comes to the board for approval. And then I'll go to K board and HLC for approval.
Any other questions from the board? Mike, you got anything?
I would move approval of the staff recommendation.
All right, I will accept that as a motion to approve the administrative assistant certificate B. And properly moved. Do I have a second? And properly moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any nays? No, motion passes to approve administrative assistant certificate B.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I think you have the next agenda item.
Yep, you're not done with me yet. So the semester, the year has moved so fast that I unfortunately forgot, thank God for my coordinator Casey reminded me that we need to get the academic calendar approved so we can create the schedule and start preparing for next year. Because we all operate a year or two ahead. So this is the proposal of dates for the academic calendar. How this process works for the new board members is within the associated agreement, I work with the faculty senate to prepare we always have a 2-year rolling calendar. And actually right now I work with faculty senate and we have our calendar out to 2025. And so while we work together to kind of prepare what that calendar looks like so that we're meeting the associated agreement days in the way it lays out within that contract, you as the board have to actually approve the academic calendar based on the days that the semester runs, what days we're off and what that actually looks like. So then that way we are in compliance with HLC. So this is for the 2023 academic year.
All right, board, fire away with questions.
And it's in compliance with K-State.
You know, I was gonna ask you.
Yep,
I was waiting
that's
to
the
see if
one of the
somebody
things,
was gonna
yeah.
say it.
And-
That's
and-
one of
and
the
with
things.
Almost universal spring break.
Yeah.
You know, I was about to ask about the USD.
Yep, so 383 already follows K-State as closely as possible with their weeks and days off. And so we create our calendar based on K-State's. You might have remembered in the past that K-State actually flipped their calendar and pushed back days at one of the academic years, and we had to change it all of a sudden for ours. And so I checked theirs. The reason why our calendar is created out to 2025 is because K-State's has been state approved out to 2025. And so we check every year when I'm working with faculty and make sure that we're still on track and they haven't done something funky. So we're in compliance with K-State. So K-State students, the calendar matches ours. And so they know when they're in class and not in class.
And it matches 320 and 323. So.
It does.
Any other questions?
Need approval.
I know.
Yeah.
And we do need approval on the academic calendar. I'll accept the motion to approve the academic calendar as presented.
A motion that we approve the academic calendar as presented.
Okay, it's been properly moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Been properly moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, no nays. Motion passes. Academic calendar is approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. All right, what's next? Gotta go back and forth this time. Whatever. Yep, and go.
So facilities and projects, there's not a ton to share since last month, but so starting over in Wamego, I don't know if you remember, but we were waiting on some supply chain issues on some countertops to finish up the science classroom. Those finally did arrive. So I would expect in the next week or so, we should see an invite for the final walkthrough and punch list to get that totally wrapped up. I don't know if you've been over there yet, but have to check out the second building and we'll get some photos and stuff to bring back as well. But it's turned out really nice. Over here, I know we also talked about the ongoing project of figuring out the water flooding issues up in the front foyer area. The maintenance staff here, the maintenance team, I guess, kind of was working together with a couple of the engineers that helped install the new roof that we got to kind of calculate exactly how much water is coming off during an average rain and a high rain in the Midwest and kind of all that. So they're adding some new downspouts to get that water off and down, but then our issue has been how do we get that water away out to the actual city drainage. And so their calculations came up in that small little area up there, we're getting 900 gallons a minute. So we needed one, a bigger pipe, and then two, the bigger issue was slope of that pipe. So we have a long run, so we have to start with the slope pretty high at the beginning and then gradually get it down. So the maintenance guys kind of came up with a plan to address that. So that should be going in sometime in March, working alongside with the roofing team as they're here tying in the downspouts to that. And then hopefully that will finally fix that issue. And then we'll.
On that subject, is there any detriment, because I know all the parking areas kind of slope down.
The wrong way.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so that's the issue. That whole area, we're fighting that. It's pushing everything the wrong way toward the building instead of away. So we're gonna catch it all in that area, push it away. But yeah, the long-term solution would be to address that whole slope issue would really fix it. But yeah, for now, this should get the water away and.
It's worked for 50 years, come on.
No,
Not so much.
It becomes a car wash.
Or a swimming pool.
So
The aquatic center.
yeah, so they'll.
Not a new
they'll try
program.
to- They'll try to get that done, and then from there, we'll try to kind of dress it up and make it look nice over the long term. And then one other thing along this east side under the breezeway, if you look close to the bottom, there's some where the cement comes up, you see some chipping kind of coming out, which is very concerning once we saw that. So we had a team look at that, kind of evaluate how bad the damage was, and turns out it's not structurally an issue whatsoever. So they recommend sealing it, and then we're planning on hopefully painting all that this summer anyway. So we would seal it, fix it, and then paint it. So.
Cost on the new downspouts and all that, are we budgeted for that?
Yes, so the roofing piece itself, we had already budgeted in, and taking care for the Ayler, the roofing company, to come and add the downspouts. And then Greg put together an additional amount to do the new drop and the pipe and all that. And we were able to budget that into just our general facility repair budget. Pretty low costs, more gonna be labor.
So make them work fast. Any other questions, board, facilities? If not, we'll move on to faculty senate. Thanks, Josh.
Ryan, you're up.
Not a whole lot from faculty, just trying to kind of stay ahead of the curve with the semester. Seems like it's flying by. We'll have spring break here in a couple weeks. One thing I did want to update was how well the pancake feed went this last weekend. Definitely want to do a kudos out to Frank and Skills. And then Suzanne and I helped with PTK. I was cooking pancakes. Suzanne was helping serve. So we're kind of, the student organizations, we've kind of clumped together and kind of working with each other as opposed to just being a single individual group. But Frank did take most of that on, and hopefully you guys came and enjoyed the pancakes. I didn't see how many people were there, but I know we were doing a lot of sausages and pancakes. Want to commend Chris for working with us high school teachers, because we had our meeting the other day looking at opportunities through Walmego, hopefully Rock Creek, maybe doing independent studies with students, having them, Sarah said with a lot of our gen eds, there is an online component to where they can actually watch the videos, do the homework online, and then they could schedule they could proctor at the high school, or they could schedule with our TLC to remotely take the test. So I think that's going to be a huge opportunity for us. And Chris has gotten to get the flack from Jeff and I and Rachel and many others. So other than that, that's all I got to say. I don't know about you, Jeff.
Well, I think you covered it. We're good.
Hey, Brian, I had a conflict on Saturday, so I didn't get to enjoy the pancakes, but I will give you guys a check to support the initiative, all right?
Sounds good.
All right.
Brian, you and I can talk offline about the pancakes.
Well, with LJ's six-figure donation, we'll be able to get really good pancakes.
Yeah, just count where you put that decimal point too. All right, anything else from faculty senate? Is that Brian? Good. All right, we'll move on to monitoring reports. Yeah.
So you're supposed to have an achievement events monitoring report. I have to adjust that timeline or have you accept what I've done tonight instead, because we don't have the latest reports loaded yet. They're not due until March and April. What I gave you instead on attachment 9 is a copy of testimony I gave last week, one to the House, one to the Senate. Apologize for me being on the phone a lot tonight. Everything's flying between the legislature, the Career Academy, and a few other things, and it's all good. If you look in this testimony, what our lobbyist for the tech colleges, Steve Kearney, and I worked on was a comparison of the tech college sector with the community colleges and universities. So if you scroll down to page 2, you will see a breakdown of what we call primary revenue, which for most institutions, it's tuition and fees and state appropriations. Washburn University and the community colleges have taxing authority, so they get local property taxes. And you kind of get to see who's, pardon me, hind man on getting fed at the trough. 7 technical colleges getting 49, just under $50 million. 19 community colleges getting over $500 million. 6 state universities getting $1.2 billion. And this, this lays out pretty swift to the legislature. What you have to recall, especially of our state appropriations combined, which is about 24 million, the annual economic impact of the 7 tech colleges is almost 400 million. If you go to the bottom of that page, you'll see, okay, let's take those primary sources of revenue and versus enrollment. What's the cost per student? Gee whiz, look who the best bang for the buck is. And it's not even close. Then if you go to the next page, you'll see performance comparisons. This totally hacked off the community colleges, by the way. So student loan default rate, we're not as good as universities, but we're better than community colleges. Look at that graduation rate by sector. Average cost, median earnings of graduates, number of graduates employed in Kansas after 5 years. Our students owe less in loans after graduation, despite the community colleges getting $250 million in taxing authority. 5-year enrollment trend, gee, the only sector that's growing is. So again, this is what I hammered with the legislature. The next page has a snapshot of information one of the legislators requested. I'm careful what I say about some of these elected people because I really don't want to insult their parents. This particular gentleman was wholly hung up about out-of-state students. Well, if you look at what at the bottom of where I have that summary, out-of-state students for the tech colleges, it's 1%. Community colleges, 28%. Crimea River, buddy. Look at performance. Then I gave a quick summary of how we've been using MOE funds among the tech colleges. And if you keep scrolling down to what page that is, you'll see a pie chart at the top of the page with the tech college revenues versus the community colleges. The state funding formula says, since the tech colleges don't have taxing authority, they should get 1/3 of their revenue from student tuition and fees and 2/3 from state appropriations. Community colleges are supposed to get 1/3. I think the answer when you look at the pie chart is not even close. And if I was in some of those community college taxing districts, they're getting whacked. You've probably heard me, except for Heather and Mike, but we've talked about the gap in the past. You know, they've never fully funded the formula or allocated the formula the way it's supposed to be. And that's what we're kicking on with the legislature right now. The community colleges are running scared of the tech colleges right now. Our lobbyist sent me this. It's a cumulative data on the gap. The gap has existed for the last 7 fiscal years. First, I want to tell you the colleges that have been overpaid over those 7 years and how much. Cloud County, 1.5 million overpaid. Coffeyville, 5.4 million overpaid. Cowley County Community College has been overpaid $8 million. Dodge City, 1.8. Independence, 4.4 million. Northwest Tech has been overpaid $750,000. Salina Tech, 2.5 million. Seward County, 3.5 million. Those have been overpaid. We have been underpaid 4.4 million. If you divide that out over 7 fiscal years, that's equal to 10% of our budget. We would have an extra 670-some thousand a year. Could we use that?
Oh my God.
Yeah. I'm almost scared to tell you how much they owe Wichita Tech. And that's Sherry's just the one really pushing like crazy. She's been underpaid $41 million the last 7 years. Because currently there are provisos in place that hold harmless. We could grow by 500 students. I don't get a nickel more from the state. I could drop 500 students, don't get a nickel less. Those have been done to protect those colleges have been underpaid. So the tech colleges, we just took it head on this year with the legislature. And still not sure where it's going to end, but we're burning through a lot of things because this is getting the attention of a lot of people because several community colleges are owed big money. Let's see. Johnson County's owed 22 million. Even in Johnson County, that's substantial. Washburn Tech's owed 11 million. My previous institution, Neosho, 10 million. Hutchinson's owed 19 million. So that's going on. And it's like, when I sent this testimony out to the other tech college presidents to review, one of them sent back, I'm getting goosebumps reading this for 2 reasons. 1, we're getting screwed on funding, and 2, we're outperforming everybody. Yep. So it does tie into achievement events. You're getting a picture of how we're all doing as far as the sector without any taxing authority. The lobbyist for Wichita State, which is also part for Wichita Tech, pointed out to me the other day, so I quickly included it in my testimony orally. 7 tech colleges, cash on hand, if they're FY20 audit, 7 tech colleges combined, had about 17 million cash on hand with their audit, okay? The 19 community colleges had over 200 million in cash on hand. Because Heather's in here, I'm trying not to say what I want to say.
I won't be offended.
Son of a
biscuit.
Yeah.
We have cash on hand. Where is it?
In the audit report.
Oh, on paper. Okay.
You know, I'm wrapping up my 3rd year leading the tech college presidents group with the legislature and stuff. And this guy who wanted, I showed you that part of the chart that he wanted in testimony the other day, he had questions for me. And one of his points was, just raise your tuition and fees. I don't care. Those kids know they're getting a good job. We don't need to give you more money, just raise tuition and fees. Just a little testimony about the educational level of people elected in office.
Don't say any names, but your reply should have been, I don't come up here and tell you how to milk a cow.
If you've paid any attention to what they're fixing to do to K-12 and some of higher ed with this transparency stuff, I'm very glad we're at Tech College. One of the questionnaires I had to fill out for the legislature recently, the last question was, what do you think, how do you think we should influence your ideological philosophy at your college?
Huh?
I went to my car, drove over to Old Chicago and had a drink before I answered that.
Or two.
No, if I'd had two, I wanted to say, I had one to help me craft it diplomatically, which was, we're at tech college. We don't do ideology. I shared that testimony with Brian to share with Faculty Senate. I can't make our story of the tech colleges any clearer. We kick ass. We flat out kick ass. And we're doing it about as cheap as you can do it. And it's hurting us, it's hurting all of us. What we're asking the legislature to do is that the new funding that the governor proposed for tiered and non-tiered funding, which is what makes up the gap, only go to the institutions that have a gap for FY23. And that over the next 3 fiscal years, they take out the provisos and allow K-Board to recenter the funds over 3 years so that it doesn't hold harmless, but it reduces the pain of poor Cali and their 8 million. I got $8 million too much, but I need it. Yeah, bullshit. Pardon me. I need it. And it seems to be picking up some weight with the legislature because again, several of those community colleges have some pretty hefty loan. And we kind of let them know, if you don't get behind this, we're gonna let your taxpayers know they're paying more than they need to. We're playing a little dirty. Any questions on that?
Which is probably a pretty good chunk. And you talked about Johnson County, what was owed them in that white part of the pie.
Yeah. Well, you go down to Neosho County, 10 million. That means a lot down there.
Yeah.
Like I said, you give me that extra 670,000 a year, we can do a whole lot of things. So that's a combination of achievement of ends and legislative report. But I also wanted to share with you, if you could write me a check tonight for 7.6 million, then I only have to raise funds to renovate the McCall building.
I'm not gonna check it.
It's on the market, 282,000 square feet, built in 1969, renovated in 71.